you go.
All right, I'd like to call to order the Town Council meeting for May 17th, 2022, 7 PM. This is on Zoom.
Progress.
Oh,
This is now available on Zoom. The phone number is 1-301-715-8592. ID is 892-4637, 1449 £. And again, in case we did not get that the first time, this is the Town Council meeting for May 17th, 2022. It is 7 PM in the Harvey Hearing Room. I will ask for a roll call, please.
Council Honan.
Here.
Council Fusillo.
Here.
Council Munson.
Here.
Council Belcher.
Here.
Council DeMarco.
here.
Council Flockhart.
Here.
Council Aiello.
Here.
Vice President Ruggiero.
Yep.
President Lettieri.
Here.
Thank you.
Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. By Council Aiello, led by.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Minutes have been circulated from the May 3rd meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion?
I'll second
Motion
it.
by Councilor Belcher, second by Councilor DeMarco. Any discussion, additions, deletions, alterations? Seeing none, I will ask for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Under general information and recommendations, I would want to announce that we do not have a date yet, but we want to dedicate the dog park down on Veterans Road to past Councilor Michael McDuffie. Councilor McDuffie was just, first of all, he was a tremendous guy, and left his mark on in a short stint on the council and left an indelible mark, and he was really the leader of this project to get this dog park done. And it took a number of years and typical municipal government stuff, but it is done. And I think we owe him a debt of gratitude for that. So we will be having a dedication for the Michael McDuffie Dog Park and at a date to be named soon. So I just want to announce that and thank him for all his efforts and his family for letting us have him for the short period of time he was here. We have a public hearing tonight, which I will open on the fiscal '23 budget. The fiscal '23 budget currently has a amount of a little over $71 million. This public hearing had to be posted to conform to all requirements. I would like to continue this public hearing to a special meeting we are having to give the budget the time it deserves and the input it deserves from residents as well as councilors. So I will ask to have this continue to the May 31st meeting. So moved by Councilor Aiello.
Second.
Second by Councilor DeMarco. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. That public hearing will be continued till May 31st. I will ask for a motion now to take an item out of order. We have an item down in new business for the Cbd Parking Ordinances, and we are very fortunate to have Art Leventis from Woodward and Curran here. His time is somewhat limited, so I would ask for a motion to take this item out of order. Motion by Councilor Belcher,
Second.
second by Councilor Aiello. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. So now we will move the Cbd Parking Ordinance up. So we are nearing the completion of this multi-year project, which has changed the infrastructure and the streetscape of the Center Business District. And, you know, people go down there and it's a beautiful thing right now. And there's gonna be challenges going forward, and we wanna make sure we have maintenance plans in place and such. But as of now, at the end of this week, we hope to have the final paving done throughout the project. So once we have the final paving done, we're really looking at spaces and how we're going to stripe the area. In doing that, we wanted to take a really good look at all the ordinances, and we found a lot that we didn't know. And I asked Art to come here today to brief us a little bit on the current, what we have had prior to the CBD project starting, what we would have if we went by the ordinances that are in place now, and what we are proposing in a way that I really think, and we will send to Rules and Ordinance, a very in-depth look at an ordinance change to the center business district. I know Councilor Christopher, when he was here, I think this is in July of 18, did an incredible amount of work on a change to the ordinance down the CBD. And I think a lot of what Christopher was doing was, and I'm implying this, I'm not saying this, was based upon assuming, like we all do, that everything that was down there was in place and actual. And it's come to the realization that a lot of the stuff wasn't. Now, a lot of what Councilor Christopher was focusing on was more the timing, what would be 15-minute parking, 30-minute parking, 1-hour parking, and he did an incredible job, and there's a 5-page memorandum from him on that, which we will reference as we move forward. But right now, we have some stuff to put up on the slide, and I will ask town manager as well as Leventis to join us up here and to be able to discuss these, just to give the residents a little idea as to what we're looking at. I think what Art was able to do was to give us 3 slides. I think the first slide we're going to look at is going to show what the parking configuration was prior to the CBD project. The second will show what the zoning with the parking would look like abiding by all the current ordinances. And the third will be what we are proposing, which will require changes to the ordinance. So we'll put the first one up if we can, Denise.
It is up behind you.
Oh, it is up.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Do you, is there a way to get that zoom better?
Denise, can you zoom that? Can you just X off your bookmarks?
Make it a full screen, yeah.
The full screen, that'd be perfect.
On the, no? The X up on the other bookmark. Oh, we went to the other.
Yeah.
Just while we're waiting for that to come up, these contradictions are not germane to the center area. We see these contradictions around town, where the old selectmen days, they ordered a no parking sign or restricted parking sign to be put up, and there was no ordinance change in the books, and now we have a sign up with no ordinance that reflects it. In this case, we have a lot of ordinances on the books that doesn't reflect practice in the last 30 years since I've been a police officer, namely with fire lanes. And we have the fire chief here today as well, who has done some testing and has advised us what the best practices that he could tolerate moving forward. So with that background, I'd go right ahead.
So this first plan is what the proposed striping plan is for the project. It basically has striping along Woodside Avenue and Hagman Road. There's no striping on Somerset. There was none previous that we've seen, and none on Putnam. The new parking lot at Citizens Bank now has a sidewalk in front of it where it used to be open along Hagman Road. So that's a little bit of a change there, and then there are some, modifications to bump outs along the way throughout the square that have also sort of changed how the traffic or the road widths in the area. If you can go to this next one.
Red one?
So I just want to make sure everyone understands. You're not going to see it on your board. But obviously, they have Citizens Bank lot, Jim, if you could just point that out. That's Hagman Road. That curb line's been put in before. It was just cars facing out. So that's a new curb line there. Woodside Ave, just so everyone knows where that is, Jim, and then Somerset, so everyone has their bearings. If you don't look at these things 100 times, it gets confusing when they're this small and we have put stripes in there and stuff. Thank you. And then French Square, the place of assembly, right in the middle there. Thank you.
So, just to clarify, this is showing us
how it was striped before, how it planned on being striped.
how it planned on being striped, so I'm trying to figure out, so take me like along Woodside as an example.
So
I-
Woodside
it's just like-
from CVS into French Square.
Where is the actual striping? Is that the gray that
The
was?
striping is
Yeah.
just a spot, so there's one spot, two, three.
Oh, I see.
four,
That's
five.
what we think.
Oh, okay.
All right, so that's what that is in the plan, all right.
Okay.
So the proposed striping, I believe, had 11 spots on Woodside from CVS down to Sweats, down to French Square,
Yeah, on the west side, yeah.
on the left side.
Yeah,
The
on those.
right side as you're driving? or
Right
the
side
left
as you're driving.
Right side as you drive.
Right side as you're driving it.
But currently, there's parking on both sides.
Yes, and this
And
also
that
shows
shows striping on both sides as well.
striping on both sides. It does
I know
not
the
sh-
striping's hard to see on that screen.
and it does
It's
not
just a
show
much
any
better.
striping on Somerset because there was none prior to the CBD.
Okay.
And there's a reason for there was no striping on that. You wanna go to the next plan?
Yes, please.
Okay, so is the next one the red?
Yes.
Yes. So what this shows is, under your current ordinances, at the top of the screen, that's Putnam, the area that's clouded is no parking between Pauline Street and Jefferson Street. That's no change, it's the same. Along Woodside Avenue, which is more towards the bottom there, by ordinance, that is a fire lane and no parking.
And that's from Pauline to
Basically,
Somerset.
yeah, from CVS to Sweats, on that side of the road. And Somerset, by ordinance, no parking on either side.
Oh,
So these were just unenforced ordinances?
Yes.
The practice, just so I may, so the practice does not reflect the ordinance.
That's correct.
Correct,
And the ordinance was put in place,
years ago.
Yes,
okay.
yeah, they've been parking on Somerset since I've been a police officer.
Okay, and
And that's
as long as I've
going on
been
29
alive.
years
Yeah,
now.
Okay.
As well as is Woodside, as long as I've been a DPW director and Scotty's been here longer than I, there's always been, but the problem is when we do a project, we can't say, okay, let's just go back to status quo when there's an ordinance that speaks against us. We gotta correct it.
Okay.
We gotta make it right.
Right.
And we'll discuss what that looks like, after you wanna.
Then
And
we'll also
there's two other locations, so there's also an ordinance that says that you can't have parking in front of an area of public assemblage, which French Square is an area of public assemblage, so any spots that abut it are, against ordinance, current ordinance.
Council President, with your permission, motion from the floor to send to Rules and Ordinance to
Well,
review?
Yeah, we're gonna do that. We'll
Yeah.
just finish.
Okay.
You can ask, yeah.
Have on the, I guess on the four roads coming from the left, have the dimensions, independent of the ordinances, have the dimensions on either of those roads, 1, 2, 3, and then I guess it's down below Somerset, have they changed, either gotten bigger or smaller?
Overall, the dimensions are the same. Where they have changed and narrowed are where some of the bump outs have been installed. All right, but overall, they are the same width.
And just driving it, it's, Bartlett Road seems like it has gotten, I drive my Tahoe down there with cars parked on both sides, and I'm holding my breath. I let alone a fire truck or a delivery truck, an 18-wheeler.
On Butler Road coming up here?
Coming up, yeah, coming up towards, by the bank.
Always been tight, yeah.
Yeah, it is, and I trust that, but to me, it just feels like it's gotten a little tighter there.
Council
But the
Munson.
dimensions
have
are the
gotten
same though,
bigger.
right?
Council Munson.
Thank you. So is it safe to say that if we were to enact or act upon the ordinances previously in place, we would be losing a large number of parking spots? And do you have a number in your estimation?
I think it was substantial. I think that's the whole point. We want to try to amend and change
I
these
see.
so we could, that's the whole thing. We wanted to
You'd
show.
lose everything on Somerset from Cottage in, you'd lose everything on Woodside, the right-hand side where the houses are. You would lose the assemblage spots, public assemblies, and that's about it. But that's significant, when you're talking to a small area, when you have trouble on Thursday and Fridays and Saturdays finding parking, and it's a good problem to have on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, not to find parking down there. But we do have one more slide, I just don't wanna.
We just wanted to make sure we're doing everything transparent, everything correct. So we wanted to look at every ordinance out there to make sure we're abiding by the current ordinances. Now, we hopefully will have an option to change the current ordinances.
So, Council President, just real quick, so again, so just to confirm, this is, if we were to enforce the ordinances that have been in place since the beginning of time, this is what it would look like.
Correct. What it would look like.
Okay, so this isn't what it is right now, and this is what it's not gonna be, but this is
Correct.
what it would look like.
Correct. So now we're gonna look at a slide as to what's proposed.
I asked the fire chief to meet us down there, we did a walkthrough with Art and Steve Calla. He had done his own dry runs with his fire trucks. And, you know, the trucks have grown over the years, and the streets have narrowed somewhat over the years. But the most important thing is to make sure he can do his job when it comes to a building fire. So we looked at Somerset Ave, in front of the Book Depot. He needs to be able to get his ladder truck, that far curve, to raise his aerial to the 4th floor of the new complex that is being built currently. He cannot do that from the intersection of Cottage and Somerset. He needs that advantage point. And then we also were concerned on Woodside, how does he fight the fires on Woodside with those dwellings on Woodside? And we'd have to get to the far curb on Woodside, which is Cataldo ambulance currently exists. I'm good, Denise, but not that good. You're getting smaller on me. And he would need those spaces to actually fight a fire with his ladder extended. You know, this doesn't give him the ideal position of actually lowering his stanchions to make it more stable, but he can fight it from the curbside, raise his ladder up safely for his firefighters on both locations. So our ideas was, okay, on Somerset, can we make it live parking? The fire chief has kind of agreed to live parking, so you have quick access for people to run in, grab their coffee and stuff and get out of the businesses. On Woodside, there would be that wouldn't be necessary there.
What was the term you used? Live?
Live parking, means someone has to be in the car.
Oh.
So if a fire truck came and hit the siren and the horn, you'd move.
As opposed to dead parking.
So that's what I think we could do with these ordinances. We can recognize the fire safety of people, the firefighters to fight a fire and save lives, and also make some accommodations to have parking in that area. That would free up the entire right-hand side of Woodside, Jim, from CBS all the way, that would be allowed parking on that side by taking 3 spots on the opposite side. Where there's a existing fire hydrant right in that fire lane. So it would be ideal for both the businesses, the residents, and the fire department. Chief, you want to add anything?
Yeah, just one of the things. So it wasn't, it's not just opinion or speculation. We went down, we physically, Sunday morning in March, we went down where there was as little parking as possible down there. There was some parking because one of the stores, the yoga studio, was open on Somerset Ave. So in order to throw the aerial safely, there is a industry standard figure. They want you to climb, NIOSH wants you to set that aerial at less than 70 degrees. So less than 70 degree climbing angle. In order for us to get the aerial at 70 or 70 degrees or less, have to have the left wheels against the curb. We have to be able to extend our outriggers 4 feet out into the middle of the street in order to help disperse the load and reach all the points of the roof of the 10 Somerset, a 4-story building. On Woodside, there are 2 3-deckers on Woodside. I think it's the same situation. We have to get the lower 70-degree climbing angle, and in order to do that, we have to again be on the left side of the street, outriggers out into the middle of the street. We couldn't do it on a Sunday morning on Woodside because there were cars parked on both sides. We couldn't extend the outriggers at all, which you can, what the terminology is short jacking, which you can do to necessitate an immediate rescue, but they highly suggest you don't do it. There are NIOSH reports that come out and say, whenever there's a firefighter fatality, they come out and do an investigation, and they'll tell you exactly what their recommendations were that went wrong. Recently, they won't tell you where, but it was in California, a firefighter was killed when he fell off an aerial that was at 73 degrees. They said that's an unsafe climbing angle, it has to be less than 70. So when we threw the stick from the middle of Somerset Ave to the roof of the 4-story building, the new building at 10 Somerset, it was significantly higher than 70 degrees. So we have to be on the left side of the street. We thought that it was a plausible scenario. We understand we don't want to lose parking down the center, but live parking would work for us.
Chief, if I could, can I suggest?
Yeah, Councilor Ayala.
I'm sorry. Me first. So I appreciate your flexibility on it, but it does mean you're gonna rely either on good behavior of citizens, right, to not abuse the principle, or some kind of protocol with the police department. As soon as you're notified, you have to respond to an incident, that the police would have to come down and clear it, which just worries me, right, that it gets complicated. And I appreciate the consideration of live parking. I'm not saying I'm against live parking, but if it were no parking, you probably would get people sneaking in to stop real quick anyway, and the police couldn't catch them. But at least they know they better get out of there, because you could write a ticket, right, with no question occasionally. So I would just think about the operational aspect of it. I wouldn't want response compromised. I appreciate your flexibility, but, and again, that should be discussed in the committee, whether or not it's live or no parking, and people sneak in for 2 minutes anyways, they tend to do around here.
But what-
I'm a sinner myself, so.
Ironically, the morning that Council President Terry, Chief Delahanty, Director Caller, and myself were down there, the crews were doing a building familiarization at 10 Somerset Ave. And the ladder truck couldn't come down Somerset Ave because of the parking situation down there. And that was under the best of circumstances at 10 o'clock in the morning on a beautiful sunny day. So it's obviously an issue that needs to be addressed. We can at most times manipulate and get the ladder truck through there, and obviously that's the one we concern about most. That's the biggest piece of apparatus we have, but it definitely needs to be addressed.
Councilor Munson.
Is it safe to say that you've made these accommodations based on current buildings and possible future buildings with the new CBD zoning in place? I mean, isn't it true that this could be enlarged in terms up to the same height as 10 Somerset? Isn't it true that a lot of these locations could grow in terms of height? And would that then require us to change parking
We
as
would
needed?
probably have to address it again in the future, yeah.
And
I mean-
then that's what site plan review does. When someone comes in with a project, so all the department heads sit and meet with Al Legee and the town manager, and we talk about these things. If this goes up here, what do we need for the fire, what do we need from the police response? But right now, there is no, nothing has been forwarded to indicate that. There's been a lot of talk. But I would suspect over 10, 15 years, if I owned a business down there, I'd be looking to go up.
Yeah.
So for now, this would suffice. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing is if we, and I have a lot of questions that I'll do in the subcommittee, but when we were building that new building that's gone up 4 stories, perhaps getting a setback for that could have really helped the situation, modify the sidewalk line, et cetera. But we gotta get all the departments and all the committees in sync, and so there should be a project review process directly related to this item and other items to catch these in the future. If you don't formalize that across the entire set of town departments and committees, it'll get lost on the next project, right? 4 years from now, we'll forget.
Yeah, and that's the issue, is the site plan review. It doesn't really have the legal authority in the Center Business District planning. Outside the Center Business District, you get the Board of Appeals, and they get everyone on the same page and working together as one.
Vice President Ruggiero, and then Council Flocka.
Thank you, Council President. So two questions. The first one's, I guess, a point of clarification. So we're talking about the Somerset Ave building, but we already had this issue, it looks like, on Woodside. We just haven't been enforcing it. is that correct? Because there's already a 3-story building right there, that right now we, in theory, cannot get a ladder onto the top?
I think
Is
if
that-
If you looked at the current
Current-
ordinances, that's probably why there was no parking on that side of the street,
But people do it.
but people do.
Okay.
It was
And
never
the town went
enforced.
ahead and did a whole center revitalization down there and
Yep,
put
and they
marked
put signs
lanes
in.
and that, you know, that
Yep.
was 20, 30 years ago. But then they changed the ordinance to reflect what they did.
No, and that, yeah, I guess my point there is, it's not, the impetus of this isn't what's happening on Somerset. The impetus of this is that we have Woodward and Curran here, they're ready to paint lines, they just need to know where to paint them. Is that accurate?
Well, that's true.
Okay,
Woodward and Curran went and said, there's a conflict here,
okay.
we can't be responsible, and we want them to be responsible to
Sure.
paint lines where.
With the
our
current
ordinance
ordinances are,
says,
and they're
no,
out of place.
You can't do that.
Okay, go ahead. If-
And on which, just for clarification, there's three families, however, one of them is directly across from a curb opening.
Okay,
In
so
front
there's
of, I
an
think,
angle
Nelson's
there.
Automotive, so there's no need for that.
Okay, and just the second question, and, excuse my ignorance, and please don't take this the wrong way, but is the issue not being able to get the angle, is it an apparatus issue, or is it, okay, because, a lot of cities and towns in this area especially, dense, tall buildings, narrow streets, but, I don't pay attention to parking wherever I go on a day-to-day basis, but it just seems, I don't know, and so, is it an apparatus thing, or is it just a,
It's not, it's, I mean, could we have run into the same issue on some of the other streets, the beach streets somewhere trying to get to the, yeah, we could, absolutely.
Okay.
But this is a chance to clean up one of these spots where
Problem
there's a
areas.
potential problem. This is
Got it.
a high-density building, there's gonna be a lot of people living in there, there's equipment on the roof, air handling equipment and things on the roof that we're gonna need access to.
no,
And it's lightweight construction. For us, lightweight construction means we wanna get it as fast as we can possibly get out
yeah,
there.
and the reason why I ask, because if it was an apparatus issue, that's something we could take up separately elsewhere, but, okay, no, that makes sense, and thank you, I appreciate it.
Council Flockhart?
I agree with the issues that Councilor Aiello brought up, and I would like to point out that nobody's gonna know what live parking is. So even if you put a sign up saying, you can live park here, nobody's gonna know what that is, unless we do an extensive education program.
I would beg to differ with you. If you look at the Fort Banks Gorman School, the high school, the middle school, they live park there every day. And we permitted live parking for drop-off on the preschool side of Cross Street. So it's a term that is out there, that is within the school districts. We actually have to tolerate it as well. But if another term is more applicable, I'd leave it to the experts to, whatever term they want, as long as people understand it.
Okay, well, maybe the businesses along there need to be notified of what this is.
Well, I think you got, some really good business owners there that are
Yes, we do.
responsible, that will help educate and help us move this along. And that's how I feel, with that group in that particular area.
I defer to you.
You know?
Councilor DeMarco?
Hearing the term live parking, I drop my daughter off at school every day, so I know live parking, but I'm wondering, signs that say 30-minute parking, 15-minute parking, hour parking. Chiefs, Steve, do you think that might be something that would be beneficial in this case?
That's enforcement issues. I think it's difficult to enforce time-limited parking,
Yeah.
especially with departments that are getting less and less people on the streets.
The problem is when you say 15, 30, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I think that 15 means an hour.
Yeah.
30 means 2.
Right.
45 maybe means 3. When
And it's also.
occupied vehicles only.
Right.
I mean, someone's gonna be in the car.
Yeah.
But then I don't want people leaving a baby in the car.
Yeah.
Someone was in the car, right? Because that's illegal.
It's common sense too.
Yes, it is.
I did, I have two quick questions that are pertinent to the timing of the situation. Do we have being that you're on a fixed timeline to get this project completed, what is our turnaround time to get a rule, an ordinance implemented, revised and implemented, so that you can have the clarity to move forward? And then secondarily, I was gonna ask you, Is there access via the parking lot to the top of the building, of the 10 Somerset, or is it pretty much no way?
I mean, from the rear, we could get the rear corner, but it doesn't help us if we have to get to the front of the building.
Okay.
I mean, if there is a fire on that corner of the building, that's the corner of the building we need to get to. We need access from all angles of that building.
And just on the back of those buildings, you gotta realize there's yards with fences, which pushes that ladder truck that much further out.
As far as timing.
From a timing perspective, they're scheduled right now to do the paving in this area Thursday, Friday. It's typically, excuse me, about at least 2 weeks to 4 weeks in that time period that you let the pavement cure is what it's called, and it's really just dissipating some of the oils out of it before you paint it. So it's about that time period that you have a decision to make it.
Did, Councilor Aiello?
Yeah, one other quick question, something you and I have talked about. I was on Town Manager Faison's coordinating committee for the design, and the flower, you know, that stone flower enterprise right there, I don't recall it being in the plans we were looking at.
That
at
was
this stage.
requested to remain.
Austin agreed to that. He was, the request came forth from Frank Constantino and his group, and Austin agreed to it.
Right. I mean, it really kills that additional spot there, and, alrighty, jeez.
With this also, I think Art was gonna continue with spaces that we would propose that would go back around French Square.
Right. So there'd be, there can be 3 spots right there. The one that comes back is right up atop. Basically, the areas that were around the public assemblage on the previous slide can come back in, and then
If you could just talk about
there's
these two.
those. Yep. And then there's 3 spots along, just on the opposite side of the square along Hagman, Jefferson, right there, Jim. On the other side of the road, yep, right in there. So there's 2 currently, we could add a 3rd. There is some issues with adding that 3rd one because of turning angles, but it's possible to potentially get a 3rd spot in there.
And is, when you're talking about turning angles, is that what is reducing spots in the CVS area?
CVS area, there's one spot that's closest to Pauline Street that has been reduced because of the angle trucks need to turn to come in there. And then on the opposite side, there's another spot in that same intersection that was removed because of the trucks.
So is potentially a possible changing point would be reducing the size of trucks allowed,
Yep.
which would potentially give a spot back here, potentially a spot in front of Blackstrap, and potentially a spot
Right.
there.
Right, if the
And that's
truck
something
sizes
that
got
goes through
reduced.
ordinance
During
and
construction, we observed that larger trucks than we had been aware of were coming into the center making deliveries. So we made some adjustments accordingly.
Vice President Majeri.
Sorry, just as we're talking about truck size and the businesses down there, one thing I was thinking about, and Chief, please let me know if this would help, or maybe try to draw some consensus on the council, but contrary to Director Calla with the timed parking, how it might not necessarily be the easiest thing to enforce, but could we put something in place where it's, no overnight parking, so if you're going there for dinner, no parking at all, maybe live parking during the day, so you can run in and grab your coffee and run out. And then would loading dock times, I know in some cities, you can only have delivery on Saturdays between, 2 and 5, and you can't park there otherwise.
Yeah, I mean,
Are these
that's-
things that
that's a
we should be
coordination that
thinking
the
about,
business owners-
or is
I
that?
mean, Budweiser delivers on one day, Coors delivers on another day, they're usually opposites, Tuesday, Thursday, Monday, and Wednesday,
Right,
Friday.
it's just, yeah.
So the size of the truck issue, we did some research today on it, my nephew used to drive a Budweiser truck, and I said to him, what happens if you can't get into the business?
Yeah.
So we've been into all the the time, the north end, we
Right,
wheeled it in.
right, right, that's
We
exactly
tried to
what
get on Hanover Street, and we wheeled it into the side streets from Hanover.
Yeah,
But, you know, we're talking about businesses that have been in existence long before I was born, and
Right.
that have service delivered there every single day, every single day of the week.
right.
We don't wanna kill businesses
Of
either.
course
This
not,
was
right.
a development to actually increase economic development in the business.
Absolutely.
And so we don't wanna
Absolutely.
harm that opportunity. I did suggest at the beginning of the project that, in French Square, where you see those 3 spots are, that be reserved, you know, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 PM as a loading zone.
Right.
And then people could drop off, you know, the pizza center gets their stuff, Sweats gets their stuff, they walk it up to La Siestas like they do now.
Yeah.
And it's kinda like a center point where you can then shuffle your deliveries around there. You know, those are all potentials that you can talk about in your ordinances, but I think, that in order to expedite or think about moving some stuff quicker than others, time restrictions and signs can always be put up.
True.
Markings, you know, that stuff needs to be done now, so I would concentrate more on the fire lanes and where the fire lanes are gonna be.
Yeah.
And where, the fire lanes are not gonna be, what are we gonna actually revoke from the ordinance and delete out of our ordinances, and then we can go back and give them this is what we got for you now.
Yeah.
And then we can worry about signage and 30-minute parking, 45-minute parking, 2-hour parking, where you want that.
Okay.
'Cause those poles are in existence, they just don't have signs on them.
Okay.
So, you know, that's the easy stuff that I think we can get done if we have to do on our own.
And that's exactly why I asked, because I think when we're shaping this conversation, we need to stay kind of focused on what needs to happen first, second, third, and, you know, at some point down the line. So that's sort of exactly why I asked, so thank you.
Council Menson.
Can I get a quick clarification on the number of parking spots that were in the CBD that we're referring to now, and the ones, and the number that we will have, based on the drawings here?
I don't think this is, do you have an exact number, Rob?
I don't have, well, let me make sure I understand the question first. You're wondering what the original striping plan, how many spots were compared to what's up on the screen right now?
Correct.
You're gonna, just based on what's there, you will have 6 spots lost based on those fire lanes.
But did we gain anything right here, though? It seems as though that makes, it's more efficient, or am I losing?
No, no, we lost.
No,
You lost a few there because the section that was open on Hagman had kind of head-on parking on both directions.
I think, Council, what you're asking is maybe a little misleading. You're asking to the original plan. Now, if you want to go back to what was lost prior to the CBD and, you know, not enforcing the ordinances, I guess, the way parking had been,
That's
it's
right.
significantly more than 6 spots.
Yes.
It's probably closer to 18, counting those 6. Probably, correct?
I can certainly
15.
update you with that
Yeah.
number, but it's a significant number.
So these spots that we're debating are gonna have to review in the rules and ordinance really do matter.
Oh, every
A
spot,
lot.
I think every spot matters, yes.
I mean, in terms of if you had to choose between safety versus business efficiency versus, you know, convenience, it might go in that order.
Well, I think obviously safety is my friend, I think I can speak
Yeah.
for everyone here, safety is number one. But if there are easier changes, like reducing the size of a truck, that saves 4 spots, or adds 4 spots, that's a plus, that's not even a savings. You know, working with language at live parking, I know even at Orient Heights, when you're dropping off, they have live parking there at the train station too, so I think that's obviously helps there. But yeah, I think anything we do is extremely important.
It gives you the sense of scale of what has happened, how this has affected parking and convenience to get to CBD. Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to move on while Art's here to go on to one other item. So it looks like everything goes well, weather cooperates, by Friday, everything should be fully paved by late Friday afternoon. The step that is still remaining would be the crosswalks. So there's 16, 17, 18 crosswalks. 18 crosswalks in the whole, that encompasses the whole CBD project. Now, originally, the crosswalks were set to be, and I can explain it better than me, but you're gonna have all the paving done Friday, and then at a later point, a crew would come in and do it in sections, and they would cut out the paving that was done and basically inlay a different type of stamped paving.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So the stamp paving would be a little more distinctive, a little more ornate, or whatever you wanna call it, and it comes at a significant cost. The cost would be roughly $120,000 to $30,000.
That's
Okay,
what
for
the
the
bid price is
18, now these have a life expectancy of 7 to 10 years, which would mean they would have to be done all the time. Well, not every 7 to 10 years. And they would also have to be cut out, redone, and put back in, and they take, a number of days for that many. So I think we should decide on one of three options. And to understand, there have been some add-ons to this project, including some work on Hagman Extension, some work on Putnam Street, some needed work.
Jefferson in particular.
Jefferson in
a lot of
particular.
us changed a lot on that, because we were having, storage going into the ground. So we extended the work up Jefferson to correct that problem, so we wouldn't be, drawing our sewage from the buildings there and the houses there into a dead end, into the ground. So stuff like that has come up throughout the project.
And there were contingencies set in, but even with the contingencies, we potentially could have a deficit of up to $180,000 or $200,000, which we would have to absorb in a reserve account in one of the enterprise funds probably, correct?
Yeah, oh, 250
So-
right now.
Okay, so we're looking at ways, now I'm looking at 18 crosswalks that are costing somewhere around $130,000, where we could paint the crosswalks like everyone else does and paint them and maintain them on a yearly basis. So I think potentially what I would suggest is that we look at three different options, keeping everything the way it is, and adding those inlays and adding, absorbing that $130,000 cost, and understanding that we need a maintenance plan in place to be able to do that on a 7 to 10 year basis, or potentially reducing the number and just having the number in the center proper, surrounding Front Square, maybe having those with an inlay if we wanted something, or to just, again, go with painting the crosswalk. So I'm not asking for a vote tonight, but I do think that this is something that would be done in June.
That's about the time frame that they've been telling us they're gonna be doing
So
this.
I think it's
sometime in
something
June.
that really needs to be discussed along with, and maybe, and this isn't the time tonight either, but I know our DPW director has been telling us for 2 years now that we need to anticipate a $30,000 to $50,000 maintenance program on potentially a yearly basis to maintain this. There's been some incredible nice plantings done there, and I see these guys every morning, they're out there with hose that we have, but they're not sprinkled, there's water access and.
Yeah, so the square area, where the trees are in the grass behind the seat wall, right in that area.
Those are sprinkled.
That is sprinkled. The other areas have water sources to be available. And it just didn't make a lot of
Yeah,
sense from a cost
yeah.
perspective to do a bunch of different sprinkler systems, and you certainly can't run lines down the road.
So it's definitely, we need to talk as we're doing budget now, and I don't see a line item on the budget right now for center business maintenance, so I think that that's something that we also have to discuss and consider when we're thinking about the crosswalks. But Council Vice President Ruggiero,
Thank you. So, what'd you say, there were 18 crosswalks
in this complete project.
So in that picture?
18
Yeah.
that have stamped asphalt.
Not in the way of the.
Okay, all right, now that you're pointing out,
Up
okay.
here, down here.
Got it. And the cost to paint the crosswalks was not included in the original?
Oh, the cost to do the inlays are included in the plan.
Okay, so you had mentioned $130,000
Well, I'm
to
saying
do
we've
something,
had,
so.
we've had add-ons like Putnam Street, Jefferson Street,
Pauline,
Hagman
Pleasant.
Extension, Pauline, Pleasant.
Okay.
So we've had, so yeah. And I'm not saying we have to do this,
No,
I'm just
no,
saying,
yeah, no.
even if we were on budget, I think it's kind of an extravagant price tag to do for something that, in the past, we've done inlays, we've done this, we've done that, and the maintenance, first of all, that's usually always the first thing that seems to be cut is maintenance, no matter what it is and what we're talking about. Nobody wants to cut bodies, and it's maintenance, and that's just sad. We spend an exorbitant amount of money on, you know, stuff like schools and fields and now these projects, and we want to maintain them properly.
And what's the difference between the two types of crosswalk that we're choosing from? I can't picture it in my head.
So, do you remember down at Yarrow Beach, we changed it? We used to, midway down Yarrow Beach, there used to be a red asphalt crosswalk. It looked like it was pavers.
Yeah,
We removed that. That was called stamped asphalt.
okay,
We removed it and we've since just painted it. You got a blue one there now.
okay.
So this project has 18 of those stamped asphalt crosswalks.
Okay.
There's also other crosswalks in the project that aren't in the area of these stamped crosswalks, like up at Adams Street, that are gonna just be painted.
Okay.
Question that Council President is asking is, do you wanna just paint the other ones for a savings of $130,000? Or do you wanna do a portion of them stamped and a portion of them painted?
It's called a stamped paving, stamped crosswalk? Sorry. Stamped.
Stamped
okay.
asphalt crosswalk.
But I don't, and if, excuse me 1 second, Counselor, can you just, they're not colored. Are these specific ones colored or not colored?
These are gonna be colored, they're gonna look like red brick, is
Okay.
what they are.
Okay.
And they have basically a pattern, like a border pattern, and then interior is a slightly different pattern to it. And the other thing that will also be colored that's not shown on that screen is where the railroad, the narrow gauge rails are. The rails are shown, but there's gonna be a stamped pattern around those as well.
Counsel.
1 second.
Yeah.
Vice President, are you
Are
done
the-
right now?
one-
Counselor-
another-
I'm also-
Counselor
yeah.
Flockhart.
Thank you, Council. Another advantage of these stamped is that disabled can feel the difference. So I would just put a word in that if we don't do that, which I think we should do this other thing anyway, we need to have verbal signage there so that when if there's a crosswalk sign, it's sounded, so that you can tell you've got 10 seconds to get across, or
Yeah,
4
just-
seconds.
Just so you know, we're way beyond audible crosswalks. We have the binding coat down, the final coat going down, audible, we have to run electricity to the crosswalks.
So we
You will
can't
see
do
them on Revere Street on the Tips project.
Usually at signaled intersections,
Yeah.
you'll have that. There are detection panels at every crosswalk, which is the entrance and exit to a crosswalk. There's those colored detection panels, which are, you know.
People can feel
Looks
them.
like a Lego.
Yeah,
Let them know
right.
they're going into a crosswalk.
Okay,
And a lot of this stuff will be discussed when it goes to rules, because we're not deciding any of this tonight.
yeah, okay, I just want the disabled to be taken into
Absolutely,
consideration.
100%. Counselor Aiello.
So just a couple of things. One is, I'd like to see the list of change orders and claims that has brought us to being over budget, that is causing this discussion to happen. The second is that I'd like to see a life cycle analysis. I mean, this is a 10-year product, and which means it is happening in lieu of theoretically a repainting of a crosswalk every 2 years or so, given this happening. I mean, given the amount of traffic that's gonna be transpiring through here, I'd like to have the urban designer here to talk to us about the change in feel and the important signalization of the prioritization of pedestrian movement around here of this kind of crosswalk versus a traditional crosswalk. I just worry that, as a community, there were a lot of people at that time spent a lot of time and effort not only dealing with the underground stuff that had to happen, but make sure that everything on the surface had a striking visual appeal, so people would say, wow, here's Winthrop. Not saying you have to have these crosswalks or don't have these crosswalks, but it was integrated, it was an important discussion at the time to have something that was sort of a bit higher end, if you will, along with the trees and everything else that was done there. So I would be very cautious as we're talking about this to make it just a short-term money saving opportunity. It may cost us more in a life cycle perspective, and it may take away from the luster of what we're trying to create for the business community down there, so.
Councilor Belcher.
Just a couple questions for Director Callow. Do you know offhand the maintenance cost difference between upkeeping the painted crosswalks versus the stamped ones?
In the center area, just the center area, I figure about $7,000 to $10,000 annually to paint, you know, to do striping. And you heard it's probably, $130,000 every 7 to 10 years to stamp them.
Yeah, it's probably around 115, depending, I mean, it's a life cycle cost, right? So 10 years from now, the cost is gonna be more, I'd say your first hit's probably gonna be in the 115.
Is there any painting with these crosswalks? Is there any like bordering?
There's no like different colored, like a border, a white border or anything like that. These are all bricked. There is, the coating is kind of like it's kind of like if anyone knows what thermoplastic is, the striping that's on the roads, on highways, it's really kind of thick. It's similar to that in some respects, and it's an asphalt base that's stamped, and then this system goes on top of it. Just kind of looks like a brick pattern product.
Okay, and again, this is gonna be sent to rules, so there'll be, I'm sure, much more discussion there. Are we all set?
I just got one simple
Councilor
question.
DeMarco.
As you guys probably know by now, I'm kind of a history buff. So I'll give a shout out to Bob Gillis. Whenever he posts on Remember in Winthrop when, I get giddy. But Steve, the railroad, the old narrow gauge railroad that was on Hagman Road, when is that getting reinstalled?
It's
The
installed.
rails are already installed.
They're already in? Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna send this to Rules and Ordinance.
All right.
I'll give you 2 days. And no, there are definitely
We're not
areas
meeting
that are
tomorrow.
much more important first on.
Yeah,
we don't
and
have to take it all
we
at
can
once.
work with the administration and to sort of triage these items one by one, so.
Thank you. And thank you, Art, for taking the time tonight, and to Steve. And Chief Wiley also for being here. Okay, we'll go back to the original format and go to public comment. Is there, we'll take Zoom first. Is there anyone on Zoom now with public comment? We can go back. Any in-person public comment? Yes.
So
Please.
I'm Laura Swanson, we had talked, and I am the owner of 32 Crystal Grove Ave, Unit 1. And this is my neighbor, Marilyn.
Hi.
She's the owner of 30 Crystal Grove Ave, Unit 1. So we are asking that the council look into increasing the number of units covered by the town trash pickup to 4 per building. So we're part of 3032, so we have 4 units in our building, 2 for 30, 2 for 32. We've always had trash pickup, and we paid the $160 fee for each unit to have trash pickup, and we were just informed that that's gonna cease as of June 30th due to having one roof over the 4 units. So we'd just like to ask that you reconsider.
Thank you. I've discussed this, and we plan on putting it on an agenda to formally discuss. I think it's nothing new what they're doing. The ordinance says 3 families and below are picked up, 4 families are not to be picked up. There's been changes in condos, you know, in just size of units over the years, and I have asked to get a number of units that would be in this category of 4-unit buildings, and that will be coming back to us, and then we will be sending that out to be discussed. I know your current letter states as of June 31st. I don't know how quickly we can work, but we are gonna try to look at the possibility. I can't say what we're going to do or not going to do, but it is definitely on our agenda to look at.
Okay, yeah, and then not to push it, but just be it right or wrong, we've always had trash pickup. You know, I talked to Mr. Keller, I talked to you, and, you know, I talked to Ms. Belcher tonight that, you know, it's just a hardship for, you you know, the 4 units to take on the private trash pickup, so.
Absolutely understand.
Okay. And
Thank
then
you very
just to be
mu-
clear, we did pay the, I think I mentioned to you, we did already.
You did pay
the
for this
Yes, everyone,
calendar
we
year,
all
fiscal
received our
year, yep.
individual bills.
You wanna add anything?
Yeah, it's just, we did receive the bills, we already paid for the information. I know it has nothing to do, but, you know, we did already speak about how our units are divided. You know, we really, I don't know, I guess we don't consider ourselves of a combination, because, I know everyone looks at it differently, but we're kind of two different, you know, on that area. We're very good neighbors, we get along very well, we're all very healthy, and, yeah, I think that's really important. I love my neighbors, I'm being honest, I wouldn't trade, I'm not moving anywhere. But, we were just trying to consider why we received the notice, and we were trying to just see if we could hear it, you know?
No, thank you, and I know, again, the letter states as of June 30th, but we will be taking this up as soon as possible and looking into the logistics and to see what we can do.
Okay.
All right, thank you for your question.
So what would be the best step going forward as far as, we just need to kind of have an idea, because I don't know anything about private trash pickup, but.
No, I
Should
will,
we
this will be
proceed?
on our next agenda and it will be sent out. So you know, I will, you can always contact me directly and just make sure I do what I say I'm gonna do, but I can promise you it will be on the next agenda to be sent out.
If this matter is gonna be going to a ordinance review, then I would suggest the council authorize an extension. Of course, we'll
Yes,
have the motion, so these people.
yes, so
don't
as we're
have
going
to-
through the process, if it does take until the end of July or August.
The
we
ones
will
that are currently being picked up,
pick up,
that
will
have
continue
paid
to
at
be picked up
160,
until,
I think it's only fair that we extend
I
it
agree.
if we have to.
100%.
Hopefully, we won't have to. We'll have an answer for
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Okay, we appreciate it.
Any other public comment? Yes.
Yes, hi, my name is Nasser Belgidi, and I'm the owner of the Viking Pub. And I'm here to ask about the patio seating, as we did the last 2 years. Is that gonna be an issue having it this year?
I'll revert to town
Sure.
manager on this.
So patio seating, Nasser at Viking Pub does have patio seating existing of 5 tables outside his back door on his property. The licensing board doesn't have the authority to allow Nasser and the Viking Pub to occupy public parking spots in a public lot. That authority is reserved to the town manager's office through a permitting process. Just like you would if you wanted to have a function on the town hall, your lawn, you would ask for a permit. Same at the public landing, you would ask for a permit to occupy. If you're gonna obstruct a sidewalk, you need a DPW permit to obstruct the sidewalk for that period of time. So again, going back to there's gotta be processes in place. The process first has to start at the town manager's office. There's been no request submitted to me as the town manager, and I wouldn't make a call on this particular property. A, because we're in transition to the new town manager. B, because we're currently doing construction and paving that lot, hopefully this week, that I wouldn't have issued a permit for this month anyway. So I would urge NASA to submit his request to the town manager's office. I will brief the new town manager next Monday on it. We'll take a look at it and see what his practices have been. Again, we're losing spaces down there and losing 4 more spaces. Can cars fit by? Can fire apparatus fit by? All this has to be walked with the fire chief, and having him on board is gonna be essential to any decision. So, the licensing authority has alcohol in common vic licensing. They can then say he can take his alcohol beyond his permitted building into the parking lot, but they can't tell him he can use our parking lot. So there's a bifurcated process, and we just gotta follow the process.
Does that help you, Nessa?
Not really, but, I was hoping I'd get just an okay, as it's very desperately needed, so, as far as fire trucks go, we've done it in the past, and there's plenty of room for the fire trucks to get by, and any deliveries or, again, I'm only asking for 4 spots.
Well, like the chief town manager said, that I think it's best if you just, as soon as possible, get a request into the town manager's office. The new town manager takes over Monday. Terry will, the interim town manager now, will fully brief him. and get an answer one way or the other as soon as possible. I do understand that with common construction, it wouldn't be probably prudent until painting and however we do with the lines and such, but, you know, try to understand your circumstances too and get you an answer as soon as possible.
I already bought the water barriers and all that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Anything else left on Zoom? All right, correspondence. Denise?
Yes, I got one letter from Frank Constantino, and he is objecting to the tree committee even considering cutting down the tree on Somerset Ave. Very adamant about it.
Okay.
And that's all I received on that.
Anybody else?
I got
See
one.
anything?
Good
Counselor
night, thank you.
Good night.
Thanks, NASA.
Counselor DeMarco?
Yeah, correspondence. I got some correspondence regarding fire pits in backyards in Winthrop. I did get to speak to the chief tonight. You are allowed, believe it or not, to have a fire pit in your backyard, but there are certain parameters that go to it. The chief actually left, so I was going to ask him to speak to it. Yeah, I've gotten correspondence asking about fire pits because I have a fire pit in my backyard. I think a lot of people have a fire pit in their backyard, and they have fire pits. They have fires in their backyard, and a lot of people think it's illegal. There are certain parameters to it, but like I said, the fire chief's not here now to speak to it, so I just wanted to bring that up.
We'll ask the fire chief to do an educational memo.
Yeah.
And have that posted on social media.
All right, committee reports. Finance Committee.
Yes, the Finance Committee met earlier today. We discussed one motion that was in front of us from the Winthrop Retirement Board. It reads, to see if the council will vote to approve Winthrop's Retirement Board's vote to increase the cost of living base from $12,000 to $13,000, consistent with the provisions of Section 19 of Chapter 188 of the Acts of 2010. After a long, lengthy discussion, the committee decided to not come out with a positive recommendation on this matter.
Thank you, and we'll discuss that in old business. Rules and ordinance.
Thank you, Council President. Rules and Ordinance met twice since our last full council meeting to discuss the tree ordinance. This was our second and our third Rules and Ordinance Subcommittee meeting to discuss this ordinance. We met last night for about an hour and a half-ish, and again early this evening for about a half hour. We had a positive recommendation after a handful of amendments that really stemmed from a lot of the public comment that we received at our first meeting. And I should have just started off by thanking everyone who was involved in comprising this ordinance from the start, in particular Councilor Honan, who really did a lot of the legwork right from Jump Street on this and gave us something that wasn't in draft format. It was close to ready to go, and it makes it a lot easier when things are sent to us very professionally and ready to get going on. So thank you, Councilor Honan, and thank you to everyone on several of the tree advocates, and I'd be remiss if I started naming them, but we like I said, we had a really good starting point. We met 3 times on it. And last night and tonight, we sort of just finalized a lot of the details that stemmed from public comment. I circulated what was moved out of our committee to the council just before the start of this meeting. I expect that you all read it. I don't expect that you but that is still a draft version. What I would ask the council president to do is, and the clerk, is to publicize the public hearing, and then whenever timing allows for us to discuss this one more time as a full council, and then vote on it then. But like I said, a lot of work went into this, and speaking for myself and the subcommittee, I think we're pretty happy with the result. It's 2 separate motions. One motion is to establish the tree committee itself, which would be an amendment to council rule, because right now there's nothing memorialized in our ordinances or in our council rules to actually establish that tree committee. So we do that, and then the second motion that we would take up is establishing the ordinance itself, which mirrors and aligns with Mass General Law. So a lot of comments and a lot of questions were asked with K&P, with the interim town manager, just to make sure that we weren't overstepping Mass General law and making sure that we were consistent with it. So that's the committee report. And I think, like I said, we're going to talk about it again in old business, but at that point, I would just ask that we put it on our next agenda for a vote.
So when we get to old business, we'll just continue this to the next meeting,
Yes.
correct?
Yep,
Thank
and whatever we need to do with the
Posting.
postage.
Yep.
Correct, yep.
Thank you, and thank you, Councilor Honan, for all your help with this. Town Manager's report.
I just want to submit a budget amendment from my office on my submitted budget. This was based on DOT's commitment on the ferry. It also reduces some of the indirects out of water and sewer. The memo is there, the spreadsheets are attached to the memo that explains it. Amendments can be done. They can be done jointly. If both parties are agreeing to the amendment, we can go ahead and amend it. This was, I believe, discussed at FinCom with Robbie just the other day. So FinCom is aware of the amendments as well. And they're also aware of the commitments that were received. Just more fun stuff to talk about. Let's talk about the MBTA and the bus routes and closures and some of the tunnel, right? So I've been on the phone with the representative and texting with the senator and the representative. They're both aware of the situation in which the MBTA has a proposal out there to limit the bus route and limit the bus route at Delby's and not extending into Dare Island and the Point Shirley area. So they know that's a frustrating point for us. They're also aware that we are deserving of some mitigation on some of the tunnel closure as well as these closures of the blue lines that we've seen in the last couple weeks and we'll see further in May and June going in the opposite direction into Revere. So they're working to get meetings with the secretary and the executive director of the MBTA to talk about these mitigations and what we deserve here in Winthrop is to be fully recognized, not to be combined with East Boston. If you look at some of their material that's out there, can't find Winthrop because they combined us with East Boston instead of setting us aside and saying this is Winthrop. So we want to certainly be recognized, but our state delegation is on top of it, working with the town manager's office, and we'll keep on pressing that forward. We have a very busy Saturday. This Saturday, we have the Spring Fair on the 21st with Parks and Recs, Bike Winthrop, Winter Police, a bunch of other agencies are coming as well. We also have the Explorer Conference that's at 8:30 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon here in Winthrop in a different area. So School Street will be occupied by the Explorer Conference. And then, of course, we have the chamber dinner that night. So it's a very busy Saturday. It's supposed to be 90 degrees and humid. So a wonderful day to be outdoors. The IT study and the wage study are under agreement. And we have a kickoff meeting with the IT study people tomorrow at 1:30. It's a Zoom call. And then again, Memorial Day is coming up, and Sunday, the 29th at 9 a.m., the Elks will have a wreath send-off to honor all the service members at 9 a.m. The 29th, May, 10 a.m., St. John's Episcopal Church will have a memorial mass. Monday, the 30th at 10 a.m. Memorial Day ceremony at Cross Street, which will be at. There'll also be a 5-piece jazz band performing for about an hour after the ceremony. And then at 1 p.m. on the 30th as well, that band will also be performing out here in front of Town Hall with some of the veterans, honoring the veterans. So all veterans events are hosted by the American Legion Post 146. Please contact our Veteran Service Officer if you have any questions. And with that, I'd just like to bring up Rachel Kelly, our town planner, who's worked diligently on this zoning ordinance amendment, which, as I mentioned a little earlier in our discussion, Council President, this will be a formal submission of an ordinance change because it has to do with zoning under 40A of the Mass General Law. It must go to the Planning Board within 14 days. Planning Board would have to hold a public hearing at their level, and then it would have to come back to council within a certain amount of days. I believe it's 45, back to council. The council then has to have a public hearing, or they can combine the public hearing with the planning board. So it's up to the council how they want to handle that. Thank you, Rachel.
All right. I'll give a quick overview and some background, and any questions, let me know. And if I can't answer them, I do have somebody from MAPC that was calling in, but if she wasn't able to make it, or if we can't answer the questions, I can obviously get back to you. So this started as a grant that I inherited when I started. It was awarded from the Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, and we partnered with MAPC to put this all together. So basically, it's more of a zoning language addition. We're not taking anything away. There's no major structural changes or anything that's going to be required of residents, but it's an opportunity to really focus on flooding and flood resiliency and having new development acknowledge that flooding is a real issue in Winthrop. So what it also includes is significantly new definition, a significant amount of new definitions that are focused on net zero and just kind of green initiatives. And the purpose of those, you know, these are all common terms that are being used a lot more now. And it includes those in our zoning, and it also opens us up down the road for zero, you know, carbon emission reduction, and pulling all that in and opening us up to future grants and programs and planning and everything like that. The packet that you have, you know, has our cover letter and the language additions, and then it also features 2 maps with the different flood level and sea level rise. And then it also includes kind of a frequently asked questions, Q&A kind of thing at the back that might answer some kind of basic questions. But overall, as I mentioned, it's really just adding in language that is focusing on flood resiliency and you know, bringing it more forward and including it where it was lacking prior. This did include a pretty extensive, you know, zoning and policy review prior to adding these in. So we have our definitions, requirements during site plan and subdivision submissions, identifying where in the FEMA floodplain the project may lie, flood level rising, and then it just you know, acknowledges different areas where we don't want to see, you know, runoff directed into other yards or runoff directed into inappropriate places. It really acknowledges flood level, and then it also accommodates potentially being able to elevate utilities or having them be put outside in an additional structure to an existing house. So if somebody's basement is consistently flooding and their heating system is down there, it provides an opportunity to, by right, have, where appropriate, if there's no other option, deemed by the, you know, inspectors, that we can have these utilities outside. These are all, you know, definitely up for discussion. We can make some changes, we can alter, we can add, that kind of thing. It's you know, definitely open for discussion and everything, but I think it's a step forward in flood resiliency, and something that, you know, needs to be happening because we're seeing, you know, a lot more flooding from sea level rise and stormwater and everything. So.
Any questions for Rachel? Yeah, Councilor Aiello.
Just a comment and a reminder, this is really terrific work, so thank you for everything you did on it. There's a slightly related topic that we've talked about in the past. It's this Thursday, I believe, the MVP grant that you're also working on, which, let me describe it a little bit, you correct me. It's municipal vulnerability. Rachel is managing it on behalf of Winthrop, Revere, Boston, Massport, the T, DCR, and a whole bunch of other players involved. And it's specifically, you're looking at the Belle Isle Marsh Inlet. And while people may not think that's you know, something to worry about, City of Boston has developed a view of building berms everywhere along the border. If you think of Belle Isle Marsh, it shouldn't be thought of as a lake, but effectively it's a body of water going there. If more water is coming into it, that water needs to migrate to other places. If Boston builds a berm, Revere builds a berm, Morton Street and the rest of Winthrop are going to stop becoming at risk. it's critical that Rachel's involved. There's a big meeting on Zoom this Thursday.
Yeah, absolutely. So I sent that flyer out, I think middle of last week to you all, and I'll definitely send it again because they actually did update it. They are asking people to register. It's just on Zoom. And yeah, as a background, this was an MVP grant. I think we applied right when I started, or right around that time. And it's kind of a collaboration between Woods Hole Group, Mystic River Watershed Association, Town of Winthrop, and then a lot of really great stakeholders in the area, as you mentioned, Friends of Belle Isle Marsh, Revere, Chelsea are, attend our stakeholders meetings when they can. Also, I'd say East Boston, all the different key players, and it's pretty scientific. I could never do the data justice, so I definitely encourage you to come to this meeting. It should be really interesting. But it's green infrastructure solutions to help with flood and tidal inundation, so that we can hopefully protect the marsh. It's such a important piece, and it's just so vulnerable. And they've gone through and done so much extensive environmental engineering and research and everything that goes with it. And again, I can never do the data justice. It's pretty fascinating. And it's to help, protect the marsh and have it, not turn into a mud flat someday, and help it do what it's supposed to do, which is to help with flooding. And then it's also such a sanctuary for a lot of different species, and they've studying that as well. So again, I'll send that flyer out again tomorrow morning. The meeting's on Thursday evening. It's open to the public. You do have to register, but it should be really interesting. And they have some great slides and kind of animated features to show flooding and what it could look like in the future and everything like that. So definitely an interesting topic if you're available. So I'll send that again.
Haven't seen a sneak preview of it. Even if you don't like the marsh or don't care about the marsh, but there's a small subset of people who think it's still the Suffolk Downs Drive-In Theater, which you don't remember, I realize, but it's a great spot. But anyway, if the marsh turns into a pond, it no longer has its sponge activity during high tide, storms, etc., and it will absorb more water, and if the only place for that water to go through is Winthrop, because Boston's shutting it off and Revere's shutting it off, we end up with a major problem. So not only do we have to pay attention to the science, it's sort of like the tea, and I'll talk about the tea in a second at the end. If we don't get engaged with the city of Boston, city of Revere, and the environmental authorities, we're gonna get hemmed in by other players. So we truly have to work on a regional collaborative basis with everybody here. I think the work you're doing is important. So maybe at some point, bringing a short slide deck at one of these meetings would be helpful to show how disastrous it could be if handled incorrectly.
Definitely, yeah. The presentation on Thursday will definitely, like I said, it has some really interesting animated slides that can kind of show the potential of what could possibly happen, down the road. And the projection timeline is not as far out as you would think. So it's pretty interesting.
And if the animations don't do it for you, we do have some live rescue shots of a couple storms ago on Morton Street. So it's not that long. It is now that it's happening. It depends on which way the storm's coming in. We've seen Pico in Morton Street, in the last couple of years, see more and more street flooding than we have in the past. And we're still looking at opportunities to try to address that, and how do we build resiliency through other grants as well.
All right. Vice
Chief,
President Maggio?
go ahead.
Just real quick. Chief, just to that point, I remember seeing and hearing about the rescue vehicle that was granted to us by the UASI grant, I believe, and it's just like sad that we have to use that. That's something that now we need to be thinking about, is how we're going to evacuate people in emergency situations like that. But
yeah, we obtained that to try to save a fire truck.
Yeah.
Right? Then we had a fire truck we lost on Shirley Street there for some, a long time, and because we ran that fire truck through water.
Right.
Now we have the high water vehicle that houses police, EMS, and the fire response, and we can get to anywhere
Sure.
we need to get to.
And just one question about procedure. So the flood resiliency zoning change, that goes to the planning board?
Yes.
And then to the council? That's how this would work? Okay.
Yeah, and I said 45, they might have 90. I will get it out of my yellow book upstairs and report back to you how long they have. And Rachel will make sure they know how long they have to get it back. I imagine that this will be a pretty quick turnaround. Thank you.
Councilor DeMarco?
Yeah, first off, Rachel, thank you for everything. Really appreciated. Chief Delahunty, you know, I want to say it was probably 6, 7, 8 years ago that they did the work over on Winthrop Beach where they raised, I don't know, you raised the sand or whatever, and we tried to stop flooding. When I was younger, the flooding all happened down the beach. It was coming over the wall, it was coming down. You know, my brother-in-law lives on Crescent Street. You could see it coming, like you could literally see it coming. And then they did that work on the beach, and all of a sudden, it seems like to me, all the flooding now is happening at Pico, at Pleasant.
You don't solve your water problem, you redirect it.
That's what I was saying. I'm saying, so did we redirect the problem away from Winthrop Beach?
I'm certainly not an environmental engineer, I'd never tried to be one. But the coincidence is the timing of the Nourishment Project and the additional flooding on Pico and Morton Street, which we traditionally didn't see before that project. But also, it's, you know, the tides are higher. It's a combination of events, and you can't just point to one single item and say, that's it. It's a combination of events that we're seeing here, and we're on a peninsula. So, you know, that's why the tide gates went in Revere, and it's all about protection. And what do we need to do to protect ourselves on Morton Street and Pico is what we're now examining. DPW director is on top of it, with Wood Curran looking at grant opportunities with the federal side as well as the state side to get some money in there to try to solve some of those problems.
Thank you. You answered my question. Thank you.
And I will officially send the flood resiliency language change to the planning board.
Thank you.
Councilor Munson.
I did want to thank you, and I also had a concerning question, and part of it is that there's so much climate activity around the state and the country, and the world for that matter. I just sometimes worry that, you know, we may not be able to, you know, make this meeting on Thursday, and there may be other meetings that we're not aware of. And I just get worried that there's so many fragmented outlets and grants and opportunities, but also we might be missing some. So my question and concern is there anyone that's leading the charge on climate resiliency for Winthrop? And I know that there's probably the state reps involved and that, you know, et cetera, and obviously police and fire and DPW are all affected as well. But it seems as though there's so much going on that would it behoove us to have a climate czar, if you will, or someone that is managing this from a pretty high level?
Well, you know, the logical answer is yes. The fiscally responsible answer is no. Because, you know, where are you funding that source? You see how tight the budget is. You look at my presentation. You know, we're only about $260,000 away from having no money and no flexibility. If you back out what we put into ARPA's in last year's budget, so that's a, you know, a tight. You know your own home and how much you have in reserves at your own home. You know, this is a $62 million budget, and we're talking about $260,000 liquidity to actually put to action in an emergency. You know, so we're you know, responsibly saying, I'm gonna say no. You have to rely on your planner and town manager and your department heads. You know, that's why we have representatives of UASI. Scotty's the emergency management director, and he gets them all from FEMA and MEMA. And we try to pool and make sure everyone's talking to everyone. A lot of stuff what Rachel's doing in emergency planning, I make sure she has Scotty involved, because he might be already have that done, or has already done it with Boston Homeland Security or FEMA or MEMA. So we don't want to have redundancy, but we want to streamline the process. And the new town manager will be critical on getting and making sure everyone's talking to everyone and that everything's streamlined.
So he pretty much will serve that role of climate czar, climate, just
Yeah, and I'm sure he doesn't want that title.
But if I could, Mr. President, just for Councilor Munson's perspective, in the city of Boston, I think the last count I had was 27 people full-time on climate, 27. City of Revere, I think is 7. It is difficult for us to be impactful when it's a little bit of her time, the town manager's time, the DPW director's time, et cetera. We're really at an incredible disadvantage. One of the strategic things this council needs to wrestle with is how to get the resources and how to put the organization and resources in place so we do have that staff that can help fight the fight. Because it's not only dealing with ourselves, it's dealing with all our neighbors as well.
As a coastal community, we should probably
And
figure
you
out a way to do
lose.
that.
If you're not present,
Yeah.
you lose.
You lose.
You carve up the money.
There you go.
If you're not in the room, they're the first ones to get off the train, right? I've seen it happen at the UASI meetings and many other regional meetings. You gotta be present, you gotta be there to get your share.
Thank you, Rachel. Chief, are you done?
I am done, thank you.
All right, just a couple of questions, I'm sure. Council Flockhart first, and I have a couple of
Okay,
things.
I have 2 things. Back to the bus routes, I
Yeah.
just wanted to point out that it's not only Point Shirley that's being hurt by this new bus route. The Highlands are being hurt too. We're losing one of our major bus stops. The second issue is,
I just wanted to drill down on that. You said bus stop.
yes,
So they're expanding this stop between bus stops, the length between bus stops in the Highlands.
they're just not going near that stop anymore.
Yeah, because, I mean, the point is completely cut off. And that's, I
Yes,
think, I just wanna make sure everyone understands
the
what
point's
we're
in a
talking
much
about.
worse
Yeah.
situation.
But we will look at
I
everything,
just
yes.
wanted to say that
Yep.
Highlands an issue. The second issue is Juneteenth. Will the town be celebrating Juneteenth by closing public buildings?
I have left that decision to the new town manager. Last year, I did not close. It is a federal holiday, but it is not one that's recognized within the contractual agreements of our labor unions. You know, and I expressed and had a conversation with the new town manager this morning, and he will make his decision on next Monday.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Council-
And not that I just want to clarify, not that I don't think it's deserving. You know, we should certainly recognize Juneteenth. I just want to make sure that the trigger effect, do we have money to supplement budgets? How do we pay the employees? The police are different than the DPW workers. Police get paid every holiday. So how do we handle that?
Right.
It's not that I don't think it's a deserving day. Thank you.
Vice President Maggio.
Thank you, Council President. So Chief Delahanty, I think this is your last council meeting in your current capacity. I see you've already changed over your threads. Not that you're in a rush to get out. But I was just hoping you could talk a little bit about the transition plan between yourself and the new town manager. How has it been going, and how will it go? What's the strategy for kind of carrying over some of these projects, and what can we expect from a council? You know, how do you need us to help in sort of that transition plan? I guess that's what I'm asking. But
Yeah, so, you know, me and Tony talk probably 4 times a week currently. We had lunch last Wednesday. You know, he's fully briefed on what's going on, any major events he's been texted in on, any major events. So he's fully aware and calls me often. And I call him when there's a major issue that I think he needs to be aware of coming into his new job. I have started a book of items that we've completed,
Yeah.
items that we're working on, and items that need to be addressed.
Okay.
Those will be tabbed out for him. There'll be a memo for him, and I'm not going far. I'm across the street, and I work for the town manager. If he wants me upstairs for a week, or 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, that's where I'll be. So, you know, it's a very good working relationship with the new town manager. He's committed to this community. He's fully committed to this community. He'll be with me all day Saturday.
Okay.
Starting the Explorer Conference, going to the Parks and Recs Fair event, and then moving on with me to the Chambers recognition, awards and recognition. So we'll both be here all day Saturday. He will be bringing his wife to the Chamber event as well. So, you know, I think we're in good hands. You know, I think I'm sure he's gonna need guidance and you know, how we've been operating, what needs to be done, like he's gonna understand the CBD striping is very important.
Yeah.
And that he'll help you through it. He has ideas that he's expressed to me privately that I think will help make the organization more efficient, effective, and certainly looking at ideas into where we possibly can get more budgetary money. So he's been exercising those ideas in his own brainstorming methods, and certainly I have full confidence in him that he was the right pick by this council.
Thank you.
Vice President, Councilor Aiello.
A couple of quick things, just as a follow-up to the T, more directed to a discussion with the council. I think what the town manager described in terms of talking with the state delegation is a necessary step, but insufficient in terms of really impacting the T. And that I would implore us to consider drafting, considering, and sending a letter directly to the T describing an initial set of concerns. A lot of it is point surely, but throughout the town, you cannot tell easily where my bus is today, where's it gonna be in the future. There's a lot of trade-offs in terms of providing more service to a 20,000 person community called Suffolk Downs, which does not yet exist, at the expense, it appears to me, of less service for the town of Winthrop, right? So I think there's some jumps into the future that are really a disservice to us. So we ought to enumerate them initially and get on there. Can't even tell, talk about the East Boston Winthrop thing, you can't tell when our regional discussion, are we part of the Boston discussion because we're lumped with East Boston, or are we part of the North Shore discussion? We're just sort of in limbo. So I think we ought to enumerate those things and demand particular attention as the town manager describes. So that's just a recommendation on the T to ask someone to draft such a letter.
Just to piggyback on that, I really think they owe us a meeting here in Winthrop at this council meeting.
Yep.
I think there's enough that has happened over the last year in Winthrop with the Mbta service. You know, the sexual assault on a bus, there's been a pedestrian hit and struck and severely injured, and now they're changing our routes. I think they owe us an in-person visit.
Yep.
I think that we need to request that.
So we are gonna ask Denise to remind me to put that on the agenda to ask to get an MBTA representative here for our next meeting. And we are also going to ask Councilor Aiello to draft a letter.
I thought your vice president was the letter drafter.
I'll do it.
So see what I just got dealt with?
Well, I think it's the vice president's job, honestly, like, yeah.
I think, you know,
But tell
take
us such a
someone who
good
knows
letter.
how to speak to the MBTA, right, you know, that's.
Yeah, so maybe that's Councilor
I'll
Aiello.
have to
Yeah.
submit it to the president and.
Okay, and then I'll submit it to the vice president. Editing. Did you have anything
To
else,
turn into
Councilor
English.
Aiello?
Quick update, on the ferry, there's two elements. One, when is that gonna get up to Gloucester? And the second is the position description for posting of what the state requires us to.
Sure, so I've heard back from the state, they made one minor adjustment to the posting. Again, talking with the new town manager, he has some ideas as to that, so I will hand that off to him with the posting complete.
Okay.
So it's drafted, it's final language, and it's been approved by DOT, and they had one little adjustment to it, which I'm grateful for, that they reviewed. Secondly, we just worked on the engines, and we have a welder coming in to do welding on the exhaust pipes. Those will eventually need to be replaced, but welding will get us through the season, if not next season as well. One of the engines has almost 10,000 hours on it. That's end of life. We need to start looking at our reserve for that. Gloucester has not given us a date where we can go up and they'll pull it out and wash the bottom and straighten the props on that. So the Coast Guard did give us a date as of today, March 25th. The Coast Guard will inspect the ferry.
May
and
25th.
May 25th, yes, good. I don't want to go backwards. May 25th. They'll do the inspection and give us the thumbs up. At that point, I'll speak with the captains and see if Gloucester has called us. The captain said we can start running it without going to Gloucester if it's gonna be a long stretch of time. We don't, so we're weighing those options of if it's gonna be a couple days, there's no sense of starting and stopping and sending it. If it's gonna be, hey, we can't get to you until the end of July, then we're not gonna dry dock the boat until the end of July. So it's a very moving proposition. And so, but the safest thing to do will be done.
Okay, good, thank you. The last thing, and you can pass this on to the new town manager, you were gonna present us with a graphic of the lot behind the old church and who owns what and all that stuff.
Yes.
So if you could just pass on to him.
I will work on that.
That'd be great.
We're just, that exists, and we're just trying to locate it. And we'll get it to the council.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I say pass on, he could pass it back and say, get this done.
Councilor Belcher.
I just had a quick question. If I wanted to inquire about putting in crosswalks where none exist now, is the process to go through TSAC or through the Council on Public Safety?
So TSAC, I would prefer it to go to TSAC. That's where the public hearings happen, that's where the input gets from the department heads as well. And that's where we look at it and see if it's even possible. There's certain sight line and vision requirements that are required for sidewalks, crosswalks to go in. So we're very specific about where we put them, and that's why you see a long stretch on Pleasant Street, as because that line of sight between Main Street and Lincoln, there's not a lot of crosswalks because the line of sight there is an issue. So that I would prefer it to go to TSAC recommendation to the town manager, and then town manager to the council.
Follow up on that. So, Councilor Belcher, so one area I'm thinking about is Revere Street over by Bayou Street, where a lot of kids cross the street and go down that way to go to the Gorman Fort Bank School. And I know this has been something that's been brought up at TSAC, and it's literally like a discussion of, well, where can the crosswalk go on Revere Street? It has to be certain amount of feet from certain whatever.
Well, you can't put it in driveways, you
Yeah.
can't put it on corners, you can't, there's a lot of restrictions there, but again, my memory from TSAC, and Steve's still here, so.
Yeah, Steve is here.
We're not gonna put a crosswalk on a street that's having a TIPS project done, because the TIPS projects are.
Right, no, I understand that.
Put crosswalks and pads in, and annunciating devices for the disabled. So we wouldn't go ahead and do that with knowing this project's coming in behind us.
No, I understand that work needs to get done first before anything.
We absolutely,
Yeah.
that section of Revere Street nearby is not part of the TIP project, it's
Yeah.
part of the National Grid project that's ongoing right now.
Mhm.
And we do have a reconstruction plan for that road, or a commitment by National Grid to do a full reclamation and sidewalks and curbs. That said, we've discussed this issue, we are committed to looking to locate a crosswalk over there.
Yep.
But the problems that you bring up, all those houses are right at that sidewalk. So you gotta have certain inclines to meet ADA compliancy for crosswalk pedestrian ramps, you know this.
Yep.
You can't put it in someone's front walkway either, that affects people. So it's a very tricky area, but the notion of sending people down Bayou is a private way. So we can't put sidewalks on a private, we're not deeded, we don't own that land.
Okay.
So you do, ADA compliance crosswalks, and you wanna start making that a safe route to school, there's criteria to have, sidewalks and safety. That's essentially, that's a common driveway. Cars park where they wanna park down there. So those are things to consider. We keep having this discussion, we wanna send them to that dump road, the old dump road. We're sending them across land that's not ours. So it's a commitment, we gotta get people on board in that neighborhood to make that a safe route to school.
Okay.
But we are committed to trying to locate a crosswalk in the vicinity of Bayou.
All right, thank you, Steve, I appreciate it.
All right, Chief, can you tell us a little bit about your excursion to DC?
Well, yes, it was a wonderful time. I'm very happy I was invited to go along with the deputy chief. So that was a very spectacular night. Over 800 law enforcement officers in one ballroom to recognize top cops across the nation. And there's honorable mention, and there's top cops. Sergeant Patano was an honorable mention in the Top Cop Award, and did receive an award from the National Association of Police Officers. And it is really telling that I felt he was kind of deserving of a much higher award, and when you see all the stories across the nation that happened last year, we're grateful that he didn't get the higher award, because that means you took bullets or your partner is dead. So, you know, we're grateful that this incident in Winthrop did not have those criterias to meet, but he's still deserving of, to me, a tremendous honor, as well as all the other officers that responded. You know, Nick is the front runner for most of these awards, because he was the officer that took the suspect down. But we all don't act alone, and Nick will be the first one to tell you that. It takes a whole supporting role to support an operation on that day for many different agencies across the Commonwealth. So we're grateful, and we're anxious to be cleared by the district attorney's office so we can hold our own award ceremony for all the officers that were involved.
Thank you. We're incredibly thankful to all our public safety officials, and we all owe a debt of gratitude to all of them, and Nick especially for what he did. Anybody else? School department report. School department met on May 5th. Topic of discussion, we are already at that graduation time of year, which is just incredible that they're in the fourth quarter. And graduation will be Friday evening, June 3rd. Graduation week will be prior to that. Also, what was discussed was the 2021 John and Abigail Adams Scholarship recipients. They were Annalise Bruno, Aidan Detremont, Maggie Don, Anwar Mbta, William Gillis, Ari Hain, Ryan Kafori, Ramsey Kaladi, William McClellan, and Brandon Morgan. And to be a recipient of the John and Abigail Adams on MCAS, these students have to, on the 3 sections, they have to be advanced on at least one of the sections and proficient on the other 2, and in the top 25% of the district. And we congratulate them very much on a well-deserved award. And that was it for the school committee this week. We have old business, and the town, there was a motion coming out of finance.
Yes, so.
If the Council Fusillo can read that motion?
Yes, so the motion reads, to see if the council will vote to approve the Winthrop Retirement Board's vote to increase the cost of living base from $12,000 to $13,000, consistent with the provisions of Section 19, Chapter 188 of the Acts of 2010. Like I said earlier, after a lengthy discussion, we decided to not come out of committee with a positive recommendation.
All right, so that is coming out of committee, not with a positive recommendation. Is there any question on the motion? I'll just explain the motion a little bit, because there might be some questions out there. So this is, was brought before us by the Retirement Board. It is an extremely worthy motion. This is to increase their, basically what it does is it gives them 3% instead of the first 12,000, it would give them 3% of the first 13,000. So it's actually an extra 3% of that $1,000, which is a very worthy motion in so many ways. It's been brought before us for the past several years, and unfortunately, due to financial constraints, it has not been passed. When you look at some individuals that are receiving $1,000 a month, that $30 could be extremely beneficial in a lot of ways. What was also discussed and what was looked at is one of the biggest opportunities, luckily for our retirees and for our employees, is that we do offer an 85-15 split on medical. And that's something that most, if any, very few at least, at most, offer that throughout the Commonwealth. This would also act, as was told to us by our actuarial, that this would increase 1 year on our being fully funded as a retirement. So this would, it would have a, we look at it as a small incremental amount. It has a $500,000 impact to our liability. So it did come out, and there was very lengthy discussion. There was a lot of pluses and minuses, but I do think the Finance Committee did an admirable job. So a yes vote on this would give them, give the retirement board what they want, which would increase the base from $12,000 to $13,000. A no vote would go with the recommendation from the Finance Committee. Any further discussion?
So just a
Yes.
question for Ken. Base means floor, so that's the minimum
Right.
benefit.
So there are some cities and towns that have a base of, under 12,000, could be 6, 8, 10, 12. And there are many that have it over, could be 13, 14, 16, 18,000. What we don't know with those communities is what their other benefits are. The retirement benefit, the benefit package of 85-15 is incredibly generous for this city, for this town. And I don't believe is seen in many other cities and towns. I'm not saying that that's why they might be more in some towns. I think there are, and a retirement expert is here, and she would not call herself an expert, but I call her an expert, Karen Chavez, and I think she looked at 102 cities and towns that have retirement boards, and of those 102, there are 20 that offer 12,000 or less, and 80 that offer the base from between 12 and 18. I think there were only 2 other committees that increased it this year. But again, what we don't know is the other benefits that are coming along with it. And what we do know is the effect of our being fully funded on our retirement, which now is fiscal 27. And this would, from what the Finance Committee was given, this would increase it at minimum to fiscal 28. So it is a pretty significant financial impact to us, even though individually it is not. And they did have, like I say, and I'll say it again, a lot of discussion on this. Yes, Council Vice President Ruggiero.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Just a quick question, and I'm not sure if this was discussed in Finance Committee. I only caught the tail end of it, but was there any discussion, and maybe I'm misunderstanding sort of how this works, but does this put us at a further competitive disadvantage with some of our neighboring cities and towns when it comes to hiring talent, or is this for just the retirees?
This is just for retirees.
Okay, got it. So it's not like someone come in and say, I don't want to work for Winthrop because that benefit isn't as good as it would be in Chelsea or Revere or East Boston or whatever.
No. Councilor Belcher.
I just want to say this was a tough decision to come to in the committee. It doesn't feel good to not allow for this $30 a month raise, but the impact for the town's finances over time, with things coming up like the vocational school, public safety building, I think that this is the right call, and it's unfortunate that it disadvantages our retirees. But I just wanted to put that out there.
It's not $30 a month, it's $30 a year.
$30 a year, sorry.
All right, seeing no discussion, I will ask for a roll call vote. So a yes vote enables the increase, a no vote goes along with the Finance Committee's recommendation to not increase.
Council Honan?
No.
Council Fusillo?
No.
Council Munson?
No.
Council Belcher?
No.
Council DeMarco?
No disrespect, Counselor. Yes.
Council Flockhart?
No.
Council Aiello?
No.
Vice President Ruggiero?
Nope.
President Lettieri?
No.
No.
Right. Under old business, there was a tree ordinance, which we are going to continue to the next meeting. Did you want to, Vice President, do you want to add anything to that?
I don't think there's anything particularly additive that I don't wanna repeat myself, but just that, make sure we have the proper posting so that we can move forward in a public hearing, and, if anyone from the committee would like to add, I'll defer to them, but.
Is that for the 31st, or was the first meeting in June?
June 7th will be the
Yeah,
first
I just
meeting.
want to make sure the
Yes.
posting is done.
Whatever,
Thank you.
yeah, whatever the proper timeline is.
Okay, and the flag policy I just have on here, more or less as a placeholder. There was a decision by the United States Supreme Court that got a lot of interest from a lot of people in town, out of town, different cities and towns throughout the Commonwealth. I did reach out to KP for guidance on this issue going further. I just sent out something I received today, so I encourage us to just take a look at that. They're going to give us a more defined recommendation. Basically, it comes down to the council is a legislative body. The council sets policy. In an event the council does not set policy, policy is set in this situation by a town manager. If the council is to act on this in the future and set a specific policy, it's good to get recommendations from KP as to how to be very articulate in the language that's set forward and very cognizant of effects that whatever language set could potentially have. So I will keep this on the agenda and encourage everybody to digest the 2 pages that I sent out today, and I will get further information from KP. New business. Council vote to transfer $150,000 from Capital Stabilizations Fund, General Fund, to the Revere Tips Project. Motion to forward that to Finance. Motion by Councilor Belcher, second by Councilor DeMarco. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Council to vote to transfer $49,500 from salary reserve for non-union COLA. Motion to send to Finance. Motion by Councilor Fusillo, second by Councilor Aiello. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Council to vote to transfer $24,000 from salary reserve to the town manager contract line. Motion is sent to Finance. Motion by Councilor Belcher, second by Councilor DeMarco. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Town Council declare DPW 1995 Chevy Cheyenne and 2005 Chevrolet Silverado as surplus. Are these 2 vehicles where are these 2 vehicles?
They're currently up behind the.
They are behind the DPW, so this is, again, acting on one of Councilor Aiello's motions to make sure we clean up. So that will be sent to Finance also. There's a motion by Councilor Belcher, second by Councilor DeMarco. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Town Council to accept several ordinances amendments from TSAC. There are several here. We will refer them all to Rules and Ordinance. So Council Vice President has something to do while Councilor
I'll make a motion to waive the reading of those.
There's a motion to waive the reading. Is there a second? Second by Councilor Belcher. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And this is referred to Rules and Ordinance. We already referred to Planning Board, the flood resiliency language, MBTA community briefings. Yeah, you're up.
So this is different, this is unrelated to the bus routes, just to clarify that. So you received in your packet the draft guidelines for the MBTA communities, and then some other information. So this right now is just an opportunity for a short briefing that's required by Department of Housing and Community Development, that requires that all town councils or similar governing bodies for the towns that are considered an MBTA community to confirm that they've received the draft guidelines and had a briefing on it, and I'll provide proof to Department of Housing and Community Development after this, after tonight. So I'll give you kind of a quick overview, just as a preface. You know, these are all still draft guidelines. The state's still working on finalizing them. If there's any questions, if it's anything more than a basic question, I'd probably be best to research it first and get back to you, just so no like false information or I don't misspeak or anything like that. So these new guidelines were designed to alter zoning in certain districts around public transit, bus, ferries, subway, commuter rails, that all those transportation hubs, to accommodate denser multifamily zoning that is a response to the current housing crisis. And it's to increase housing near public transit. The guidelines, again, are a draft, and the final guidelines should be published in the near future. Hopefully we'll be getting that soon. In addition to these final guidelines, there'll also be hopefully a calculation tool and different tools that'll help analyze current zoning that each town has, Winthrop included, and their dimensional regulations to identify which existing zoning districts might meet the new compliance and guidelines. So currently the guidelines kind of loosely state that the zoning needs to certain zoning areas need to accommodate multifamily style housing, which allows for 15 units per acre, and housing should accommodate families, so there shouldn't be any like age restriction. It shouldn't just all be one bedroom. There should be multi-bedroom and everything. We have to accommodate families. And there's minimum unit capacities that we need to meet. So Winthrop, again, is it's designated as a subway or light rail community because of our proximity to Orient Heights in the blue line. And so our minimum housing units right now that we would want to have accommodated is 2,205. Now, the big thing to remember is these housing units would need to be within ballpark about a half mile of the T. This does not mean that we have to accommodate or zone for 2,000 new units. Our zoning may already accommodate and meet these guidelines, but if there's, let's say our zoning accommodates for 2,000 units, we would have to find an opportunity to potentially accommodate the remaining 200, make up the difference. So let's see. Notes. So again, once that the final guidelines come out and that calculation tool comes out, we'll be able to kind of better analyze our existing zoning and our dimensional regulations and density and gross density and everything, and how we potentially meet the guidelines, or how we have to make some changes. So some things to kind of consider. So right now they want to see this denser housing within a half mile of, in our case, a subway station. If you want to go a half mile in the subway station, you're in the middle of water, in Winthrop's case, over on Saratoga Street and everything. So there's accommodations for things like that. We may not be able to make the half mile. There'll be accommodations for those things, undevelopable areas, again, marshland, ocean, everything like that. And then there'll also be, compliance. The compliance guidelines will allow for some flexibility for all communities, but Winthrop is kind of a good example, I think, of some flexibility that may be needed because of our proximity in the water and the wetlands and everything like that. Again, nothing set in stone. These guidelines will be coming out. They'll be accommodating, comment and concerns that have come to be, and there will be some technical assistance available. I'm going to look into some grant funding for that, but that may be something we want to consider if we need it. The planning board's on top of it. We'll be using some of our meetings in the next couple months to analyze our zoning, our current zoning, kind of compare it to the draft guidelines, or when the final guidelines come out, and comparing it to that as well. See in what areas we maybe already meet these guidelines, see where we don't, and see what areas might be, open for that flexible space to accommodate the denser zoning. So overall, again, these are drafts. I definitely encourage you to read through it. It sounds a lot more complicated than it is, and they've done a pretty good job of breaking it down and kind of explaining everything and kind of condensing it. So definitely take a look, and as soon as the final guidelines come out, we'll be able to kind of dive in and really, take a look at everything and compare and see what we need to do. In December, and this form has not been released yet, it'll be released when the final guidelines are submitted. There'll be a form that we have to fill out that says, yes, we are in compliance, we do have these opportunities to meet these new zoning guidelines, or no, there's not, and then we'll also have to kind of come up with a plan to meet these new guidelines and everything. So definitely take a look. It kind of explains it really, really well, and we can kind of learn a little bit more. If there's any questions, let me know. And I've chatted with MAPC on this, kind of gotten a crash course on it, and like I said, the planning board is on top of it as well. I did talk to MAPC, and I would have to confirm this again, but they could come in once the guidelines are finalized. They have some people that are kind of real experts in this, and they may be able to come in and do like a Zoom presentation or something. I'd have to confirm that again, because typically MAPC works under a contract, but we may be able to have them come in and help with that as well if we feel like we need it, or do it at a planning board meeting and anyone can call in. Yeah, if there's any questions, let me know, and if I can't answer them now, I can get back to you, and we'll sort of go from there. So, it's a starting point, so.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Any questions? Thank you, Rachel. I have down as new business, trash enterprise fund, and I would like to send this to Rules and Ordinance and to Finance for a joint meeting. In this, I would, we would like to discuss, first of all, it's been a year since we've begun this enterprise fund, and, to begin an enterprise fund and to have a successful first year is very admirable. So I thank the work that Steve Caller has done and Wendy Millar-Page has done to get this running and off the ground. I would like to now take it to that next level where we can look at different items as it relates to a bag, to more enforce the contract where it is a 1-barrel limit, and then to look at bags, to look at items as was discussed in public comment earlier as to be inclusive of for families potentially, to look at trash abatement policies. Trash abatement and trash enforcement. Abatements have been something that I've been looking at since the beginning, but it's an impossible thing to do until we adhere to the contract, which states certain things. So there are a bunch of stuff that I would like to look at, and I would encourage the Finance and Rules and Ordinance to have a joint meeting on that. Second round of public comment. We will look on Zoom.
I have no hands raised.
We'll look in-house. And we will not ask twice. Right, we appreciate it. Public relations, there's a Parks and Rec Spring Fair Craft Show at Ingleside Park this Saturday, 11 to 3. Chamber Awards Dinner, May 21st, Saturday, also at the CPYC, 6 to 8. And I will talk a little bit, not talk a little bit, but just announce who the winners of the awards are. It's a great event, and it's been held for many, many years at a few different locations, and it will be nice to have it down at the CPYC. It will be, I think, a shorter event than in years past, but a very distinguished list of recipients. Past distinguished service for former Speaker of the House, Bob DeLeo. Community service, Susan McGuire. Educational excellence, Connie Grayson. Student Leadership Awards, Christian Bonapane and Jennifer Delahanty. Excellence in the Arts, Justin Kopek. Lifetime Achievement, Ernie Hardy. Chamber Member of the Year, Marianne Russo from Rockland Trust. Town Service, Meredith Hurley. Patriot Award, Bill Brown. Coach of the Year, High School Girls Varsity Hockey, whole team of coaches, Anthony Butch Martucci, Chris Palmer, Sean Carlton, and Taylor Fendaka Brown. Visual Achievement for Kids Only. In Business of the Year, Twist and Shake. Again, this is Saturday night 6 to 8 at CPYC, tickets at $35, and I'm sure you could contact the chamber for more information. And of course, we'll always end on the rabies clinic, which will be held at the Winthrop Auditorium, front lobby from 10 to 12 on June 4th. Do we have any comments? Councilor Honan? No. Councilor Fusillo? Councilor Munson?
I did want to congratulate Mia More in conjunction with the Oddfellows and the Beacon Gallery, a very successful clothing drive for families in need here in Winthrop. It was a huge effort, a lot of people donated, and I just congratulate Mia More for organizing such a great philanthropy.
Thank you so much, Councilor Munson. Councilor Belcher?
Nope.
The 6th, 7th, and 8th grade Raiders flag football team is playing under the lights at 8 o'clock this Saturday night, trying to catch a very overrated Patriots team in the standings, coached by Councilor Munson. So if you can get down there, appreciate it.
Councilor Aiello? Thank you. Councilor Flockhart? Vice President Ruggiero?
I just want to quickly thank the community and the school department for their support of the WinArc Run, Walk, and Roll a couple weeks ago. It was we haven't had the event in about 2 years due to COVID, but this was sort of the first big event back, and it felt really good to be with everybody. And thank you for Councilor Belcher also for joining us in person that day. So
thank you. And I would like to end with thanking once again the interim town manager, Terry Delahanty. This is his last council meeting.
Giving you people to stand in
Yeah.
ovation, picking a town manager.
Motion to extend for 3 years.
No, you've served Winthrop for many years in different capacities, but the job you've done, especially this past, I don't even know what it's been, 9 months, 10 months, has been
A year and a month.
How many months? And I don't even know what it seems like. I'm sure much longer than that. But I mean, you know, we've had no treasurer, no assessor, no CFO. You've gone through 2 budget cycles with us, enacting one and completely doing another. We are incredibly grateful to you and appreciative for all you do. We know you love this town, and that's all I got. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
All kinds of motions, all kinds of seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All the ayes have it.